Welcome to the first episode of 2021 for The View from Down Under. I would like to quickly apologise for the delay in releasing this podcast. Unfortunately, we have had some technical difficulties and were unable to publish this podcast before the start of the weekend. In this episode, we'll be giving you a breakdown of the NFL playoffs, including Wildcard Weekend, which has just been played. So please take that into account when listening to this. With that being said, Charles, Dylan, and I hope you enjoy another episode of The View from Down Under. Welcome back to The View from Down Under and our first episode of 2021. It's a very exciting time in the sporting world, obviously with the NBA season well into its first month and the NFL postseason coming up this weekend. Week 17 was a very crazy end to the season, so I just want to start with that quickly. Charles, as a Giants fan, from your perspective, how do you feel about the way Doug Peterson acted in that game against Washington, obviously with benching Jalen Hurts?
I mean, I just think I don't know how he can be the coach, how he can be the coach next season. Because how can he look his players in the eyes and say, I try to win that game? You're putting in a guy who you signed to your practice squad, who's been on your team for 4 seasons, has never done anything, has thrown 1 touchdown pass in his entire career, has completed a grand total of 20 passes in his career, a 6th-round pick who the Redskins waived. I just, I can't see how. Look, either Wentz is leaving or Peterson is leaving this offseason, because there's no way both of them can come back next season after what's happened. And I just think I couldn't believe it. It was an absolute joke. And, I would have loved the Giants to make the playoffs, mainly because I would have loved to have seen a 6-10 team get to the playoffs for the first time ever.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he's got some, there's a fine line between courage and stupidity.
He's got some balls on him, I have to say.
I mean, you don't make that decision unless you're trying to get a better draft pick. And, they're picking 6 in the draft, so maybe that was his game plan. I mean, he's got to have a lot of job security to pull such a crappy stunt like that. So, it's just, I just thought it was pathetic.
Was it clear that he was tanking, Dylan, from your perspective?
I don't think it's 100% clear, but mostly clear, yeah. I think when it was going down, my initial reaction was that this is not something that would have happened if this was a normal season with fans. Yeah. The Philly fans are the craziest in all the sports world, at least in America. And I think the boos, they would have been pissed. So I don't think that's something that he would have tried to do in front of Philly fans. My other reaction was just, I'm not a Giants fan like Charles. I didn't really care that much, because if you only win 6 games, I'm sorry, you shouldn't be in the playoffs. Yeah. I think Washington provides not really much of an upgrade over the Giants against Tampa Bay, but I was kind of apathetic about it. But I did think, they if they would have won, they would have gone from drafting at number 6 to, I believe, number 10, which isn't a huge difference, but it could be a big difference.
You could argue in the NFL, though, 6 to 10 is quite a difference in terms of like reaching like top tier players.
It could be, yeah. So I think it's one of those things where it's on the face of it, it looks like he's throwing the game. They're probably not going for that number 6 pick over number 10, but in hindsight, you can justify it that way. But just some interesting thoughts around that. I think with the backlash of how it went, I don't think this is something that you're going to see happen again anytime soon.
Well, I think it's quite clear that there are problems with his relationship with his quarterbacks, because Carson Wentz has obviously had a very bad season. I think that is due to his talent on the field as well, but also his relationship with Doug Peterson as well. So there's going to be some movement there in Philly. I want to speak about a couple of the other quarterbacks in the NFL as well. Deshaun Watson being paid that massive contract at the start of the season, and the Texans went 5-11. Is he in trouble in Houston, and is it time for him to move on?
No, I think he's the future there. Look, the Houston Texans were crap this year. They finished 4-12, and they don't have their first or second round picks because they traded them to Miami in the Tunsil trade. But look, I think you have to keep him because, what else are you going to do? Completely rebuild again? They got rid of the real problem, which was Bill O'Brien. The only problem was it was 2 years too late.
Yeah.
But look, he's gone. He's not pissing away draft picks on crap players anymore. So, look, Deshaun should give them time. I don't know why the Texans keep hiring ex-Patriot players, coaches and stuff. Like, they clearly haven't learned from Bill O'Brien and every single Bill Belichick understudy ever. Bill O'Brien was the only ever somewhat success, and even it was nothing but a colossal failure. He should at least give them an opportunity to, rebuild and retool around him. Given he still had a very good season, he had more passing yards than any year, and this is after they Bill O'Brien traded Hopkins for nothing. So, he at least, and they're paying him $40 million a year. So, he should at least give them an opportunity to rebuild the team.
And then
let's just appreciate how astounding of a season that was to lead the league in passing yards after trading away Hopkins and everybody saying, well, he might not be as good this year. And then Will Fuller gets hurt, and now we're going to see Watson decline a little bit, and he still leads the league. Most guys outside of fantasy football players can't name a single receiver for Houston right now, but he's doing that with QT and Brandon Cooks and Darren Fells, and that's just impressive. He's a great quarterback.
Another quarterback that has had a very unimpressive season and is probably likely to be traded is obviously Sam Darnold from the New York Jets. Are there any landing spots for him in the league at all?
Yeah, look, I've got a bone to pick with this. I don't think the Jets should trade Darnold because they're only going to get a second or something for him. Darnold is not the problem. He was great at college. The problem was Adam Gase, who was fucking hopeless. He's a crap coach. He's only ever gotten jobs because he was Peyton Manning's OC. And for God's sake, I could be Peyton Manning's OC and he could throw 5,000 yards in his prime. This is a guy with a lot of potential that he's just been stuck in the cesspit of failure that is the New York Jets, the perennial butt fumble. And it's not been his fault that his offensive line is crap. His coach is crap. His defense is even worse. This isn't his fault. And if he were to get traded, and I think he should want to get traded, then I think he could take off. He's got a lot of ability and potential, and he's just been stuck in a crap situation. I think there's a lot of external sort of influencing factors that have caused him to be considered such a bust, not just his own play. Obviously, he hasn't well enough, but he's playing for the Jets, man. Come on, you got to give this a break.
I think it's going to come down to what they're able to do in that draft because they obviously have not found their franchise quarterback, and Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence are both going to be there. So, it's going to really come down to
Lawrence. Yeah, but the Jags will take Lawrence, which means that
with the number one pick, you think?
Yeah, mate. He's been ever since he stood foot on Clemson, everyone's thought he's going to be the number one pick, and he didn't play very well against Ohio State, but he'll be first. The Jags need a QB, and they're terrible, so they need a big star, and he's right up that alley. Look, the Jets, they've got the 2 pick. They should probably just trade down, get more picks, and try and build some sort of offensive arsenal around Darnold. They need to hire the right coach, not a complete muppet with enormous eyeballs who does nothing on the sideline or watch his hairline.
Give him some protection. They've got good receivers. They've got Crowder, who had quite a good season. Give Darnold some protection and see how he goes. Their O-line is dog.
They haven't given him the opportunity to succeed. They've just set him up. Could anyone really have led the Jets to a better record this season than what they had? and they couldn't even butt fumble their own season run. They didn't
Yeah.
even get the number one pick. They're just absolutely.
That game
pathetic.
against the Raiders stands out for me with that final possession and just completely throwing the game away. And it was so obvious as well.
Mate, they're the New York Jets. All right, they haven't done anything since Joe Namath was there.
Yeah, no, exactly. Another quarterback that's been talked about a lot in the last couple of weeks is obviously Tua down in Miami. Is the experiment finally over, in your opinion, Dylan?
It could be, and this applies to Sam Darnold as well at the Jets. Arizona kind of broke the mold a couple of years ago, taking Kyler Murray right after taking Josh Rosen, in the first round, because they felt that Kyler Murray had a higher ceiling, and Josh Rosen might have been a perfectly serviceable quarterback, but they felt Murray had a higher ceiling, and he does. And I think, if you're the Jets, if you're Miami, you could say, hey, these guys are serviceable. They might be good. We want great. We think Trevor Lawrence. We think Justin Fields. Even Trey Lance out of I think the South Dakota State or North Dakota State.
Yeah.
They potentially have higher ceilings. We want to go with that route. If you're either the Jets or Miami, you could draft. You could trade down. You could also take Penei Sewell out of the my University of Oregon Ducks, who is a stout, legit number one offensive line draft pick, and try to get some more protection. If you're the Jets, if you're Miami, you'd probably trade down. But I think Tua was not that great this year. You flip-flopping between fits. I think that tells you a lot, at least how they felt in year one. But you could also say, hey, give them more time. I'm just saying I would not be surprised either way after what Arizona did, and seeing Justin Fields play like he did the other day, in the playoffs. I think either one of those teams could pull a move and draft a quarterback and move on from Darnold and Tua.
Yeah, he really made a statement with that game against Clemson. Will be interesting to see how he plays in the national championship game and if he can lead Ohio State to another national title. The last thing I want to speak about in week 17 is obviously Derrick Henry finishing the season with 2,000 rushing yards, obviously becoming the 8th player of all time to be welcomed into that illustrious club. Is it time to finally start taking Derrick Henry seriously?
Yeah, it is. He during the Titans playoff run last year, I think he really established himself once Tannehill became the starting QB and they got rid of Mariota and really committed to the run game. He's just sort of taken off. He's always been very good, but he's finally getting the recognition I think he deserves. He's playing on the franchise tag this year, so he's had a big incentive to play well. He'll get himself a nice fat payday in the off season. He's stiff-armed a fair few people into the nether realm. Josh Norman, obviously, this season. That was quite funny to watch.
Yeah.
He's a true bell cow back. He's really lifting this team on those very big, broad shoulders of his and carrying them because, Tannehill, he's a serviceable QB, but he's not, he can't lead you to victory in, games. You can't rely on him to throw 50 times a game and, outscore another team. So, the Titans, they've been playing well. Their defense is a bit suspect still. They haven't had their front four doesn't pressure a lot. Losing Jarrell Casey.
Yeah, they're bad.
And Clowney's been terrible. Their back four isn't that much better. Malcolm Butler hasn't been that great this season. So, they've got a big game this weekend against Baltimore. But if they can get the lead early, like they did against them last year, and then just give the ball to Henry and watch him just run it away, they're in with a very good shot. So,
Well, they obviously went all the way to the AFC championship game last year on that incredible run. And in saying that, let's move on to our playoff predictions. And the first game of the weekend is the Bills versus the Colts. In my opinion, fellas, I can't really see the Colts winning this game at all. I think the Bills are playing very well at the moment. They have not won a playoff game in 25 years, however, which would be a bit of an incentive for them to kind of break that curse. But I think this should be a pretty easy win for the Bills, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it needs to be said, too, that The state of New York is allowing, I think, 6,400 fans at that game, and that's got to be the hottest ticket in Buffalo in I don't know how many years.
The old Bills Mafia coming out.
Yeah, I think this game, it's a shame this game doesn't have more of a prime time for it.
I think this should be the later game, in my opinion.
This is a game that you won in the second round of the playoffs. This is a great matchup. I think I think the Bills. I'm picking the Bills to beat Kansas City in the AFC. So that's how far I think they're going to go. Brian Dable, the offensive coordinator, has these guys playing lights out right now. And if you look at the games that they lost on the Hail Murray and then a couple other games that they could have gone undefeated. Josh Allen has just had a revival this year. Their defense is not that good, but that offense is just clicking. There were a couple crazy stats about Buffalo. They are the second team ever since I think the 2012 Patriots to get at least 20 first downs in every single game of a 16-game season. Wow. And they are the second fewest team to punt in a full season. So their offense was clicking. They scored a ton of points. I mean, they put up 56 on Miami, who has a really good defense. And I think with that win, they took away the coach of the year from Brian Flores. But the only game script that you really see for Indianapolis to win this is if Indy's given up something like 4 points. They're only giving up 4 points in the second half of games. So is Buffalo going to only score one touchdown, a field goal in the second half? Probably not. But the game script is keep it close, go into halftime with the lead if you're the Colts, and then hope that your defense just pulls through again and pitches a shutout, basically. But I don't think that's going to happen. It's cool to see Phillip Rivers in the playoffs. He should have been there way more throughout his career.
Final time maybe for Phillip Rivers?
I think so. I wouldn't be totally surprised if Indy wins it because I think they're pretty good. But their defense is I think their defense cannot keep up with this team, especially their linebackers. Their linebackers, Okereke and Leonard, they're not very good in pass coverage, and that's what Buffalo wants to do. They pass a bogus amount on first down especially, and I think that they're just going to pass all over Indianapolis this weekend.
Well, I think their running game is definitely going to be something to watch. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor has had a remarkable rookie season, finishing third in rushing. So I think if he can get off and running in the first quarter and get some helpful yards for that offense, I think it should be a very interesting game to watch. Charles, Dylan mentioned that he has Buffalo beating the Chiefs in the AFC. Do you see Buffalo making a deep playoff run here?
No, I actually see Buffalo losing. I think Indianapolis will cause an upset, sort of shake up the playoffs. I think looking at how Buffalo played last season, I'm just going to go back to the game that they played against the Texans. They're up 16-0 in the playoff game. They go on to lose in Houston. I know it was in Houston, but I think Indianapolis with Rivers at QB, they've got a lot more experience. I know there's a lot of sort of stigma about him that he doesn't play well in the playoffs, but I think the Colts will come in and they'll win. I think it'll be 28-24, something like that. I think the Colts will get up.
Fair enough.
It's a big upset pick.
Moving on to the first NFC game of Super Wild Card Weekend, which is a huge divisional matchup between the Rams and the Seahawks. Seattle are on a 4-game winning streak at the moment. And the last time they were on a 4-game winning streak heading into the playoffs, they went to the Super Bowl. So there's a little bit of history there for them. And obviously Jared Goff just had surgery as well. So in my opinion, this looks like an easy win for the Seahawks in the first weekend of the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. I think with the Goff injury, they were already behind. I don't rate Goff too much personally, but, losing him and going up to your backup QB, I think Seattle will get this done. Playing in Seattle as well. I know there's no 12th man, but, they've played, I just think they're better at pretty much every position other than defensive front, really, because of Aaron Donald. But, yeah, look, I think Seattle will get up by 10, 14 points, something like that. I think they'll just sort of keep the clock rolling. I think they'll run the ball a lot, get ahead early, run it down. I just can't see the Rams scoring enough points, to be honest.
Are people sleeping on Seattle a little bit, Dylan?
This is actually my bold upset pick. I think if I had to pick an upset, I would go with the Rams here for a couple of reasons.
Is there a bit of bias there, or?
No, I hate the Seahawks, but no, I think I can easily talk myself into a Rams win over more easily than a Seattle. At the end of the day, you have to say maybe I'm being crazy by picking either John Wolford or Jared Goff over Russ, but Russ has not been good lately. And if there's one thing that the Rams do really well, that they're going to do a whole game, is they run cover two, which for your guys' audience, that's two high safeties. So they got more coverage in the secondary. Russell Wilson does not play well against cover two, and that is what he's going to see all day long. I think the Rams have studs on defense. I think Aaron Donald gets a lot of accolades, but he might even be underrated despite getting all the accolades. He might be the best player in the NFL. I mean, that dude does stuff every single week that no one else is doing. They have the defensive line to pressure Russell Wilson. They have the system to cover two there that he's going to be uncomfortable with. And I think that the Rams offense can do enough against a pretty poor Seattle defense to pull out a win. I think if we're looking at it from the X's and O's and like who's got the pros in which segment of the game, I would give the edge to the Rams. The one X factor that you never know about is Russell Wilson. If he just goes totally off, then Seattle's going to win it. But if you're just looking at it from the X's and O's, he doesn't do well against cover two. The Rams play a cover two that's pretty tight against what he wants to do, which is throw the deep ball. And they're going to have DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, I think, pretty well in check with that cover two. Jalen Ramsey, those guys patrolling the secondary. There's the big question mark over whether or not Goff is going to play, because if Wolford plays, he didn't do terrible last week, and he almost offers more than Goff does. He throws the deep ball at a higher percentage than Goff was. I think Goff had like a total of 9 completed deep passes to the outside the entire season. Wolford had 4 just in the last week's game against Arizona. Wolford can run the ball. So you don't quite know who's going to even play. If Goff is good to go, he's got to play, but you never know. Wolford might play and provide more than Goff does.
I think they had I think they had more of an opportunity with Wolford playing over Goff, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's certainly possible, especially Sean McVay is a really good coach with another week under his belt of prepping Wolford. It's possible. But again, you just got to kind of go with like, am I really going to pick a Wolford or a Goff-led team over Russell Wilson? Am I being absolutely insane here? But I think the Rams are overall a better team, and the Seahawks, especially Russell Wilson, has just not been playing well lately.
Yeah, second half of the season.
Yeah, Russ always seems to be – he's MVP of the season every year through about the first 5-6 weeks. And then they go on a 3-game losing streak, and then he has to recover them because the defense seems to be terrible every year, even with Jamal Adams this season. I think – look, as I said, I think Seattle will get up, but I think – I just can't see the Rams scoring enough points in Seattle. If this was in LA and there were fans, even though the Rams don't really have that many fans, I could see the Rams doing it. But I just think Seattle would get up here. But if the Rams won, it'd be a pretty low scoring game. I think I think the key here is Jalen Ramsey. If he can shut down Lockett and Metcalf, whoever he takes, and sort of limit the deep ball and sort of force them to run it and sort of go against that front four, I think that the Rams will have a much better chance of winning.
I think the one thing to pay attention to if Seattle wins the game is watch how often they pass on early downs, because when Russell Wilson was on fire, cooking early in the season, they were passing a lot on first downs and second downs, especially in the first half. I think if they are going to win, that's what they got to get back to. So kind of be watching for that in the game.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's going to be a very interesting game to watch. Speaking about underrated defensive players, obviously mentioning Aaron Donald, I want to speak about Washington because their matchup is against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Washington as well. I just think this team has a very underrated defensive front four, and they could give Tom Brady some problems in his first game in Wild Card Weekend in the playoffs.
Yeah. Chase Young is an absolute man down there on the front four. In general, Washington's defense has played. When you look at the teams, they've kind of held the high octane offenses in check too, for the most part. Their defense is going to have to be, if we were talking game script earlier with Buffalo and Indy. The game script for Washington is it's got to be a super low scoring game. Yeah. And that defense has to play out of their minds. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Tom Brady has too many weapons.
Yeah.
Tampa Bay is just too good of a team. Washington is not going to be able to run the ball against Tampa Bay. They have stud linebackers that are fast and fly all over the field. That front line is going to be, turning their noses up all game against Alex Smith, who should be said he deserves comeback player of the year. But Alex Smith has not been 100%. Good this season. He has not been good this season, though. He has not been playing well. That offense is pretty abysmal. That's why I don't think they have a chance to win the game. If they had a little bit more juice on offense, maybe they'd have a chance. I think it's cool that they made the playoffs. I wish they had a winning record because I hate seeing teams come in with losing records. But I just think Washington, they don't do anything terribly well outside of defense. So, but even there, I think Washington, they led the league, I believe, in allowing second half points at like 4. So just insane. But I don't think they're going to do that to Tampa Bay.
Moving on to the Ravens at Titans. We obviously spoke about Derrick Henry before and the incredible season he had. The Ravens have had a pretty up and down season, in my opinion. Obviously, they had that big COVID scare against the Steelers, and Lamar Jackson didn't play in that game. But in the 5 games since he has returned, they've won all 5 of them. So I think Lamar might have the point to prove in this playoffs. Do you agree with that, Charles?
Yeah, he's got to start winning in the playoffs. He's played 2 games in the playoffs, and he's been pretty terrible in both. He put up an awful lot of yardage against the Titans last year, but that was only after he'd been embarrassed and, the team was down by a lot and he had to start throwing. He was under 50% completion again in the game against the Chargers, and then he was just above. He was at 52.5 against the Titans. 3 TDs, 3 INTs. He just hasn't been good enough, and he's looked dreadful just watching him as well. He needs to start playing better. They're forcing him to try and beat them with his arm. Taking away the run game, which is what the Titans did last year and what the Chargers did as well. And he just hasn't been able to do it, unfortunately. And, if he loses, he's a very good player, but if he loses this game and he plays poorly again, there's going to be big questions asked of him because, he might have been the MVP last year, but, this is a what have you done for me lately league. And, he's got to start playing better or else, he'll be stained with this sort of image that, he puts up a lot of numbers, but he can't get it done.
Dylan, do you see this as an upset alert game at all, or do you see this as a pretty straightforward win for the Ravens?
I could easily talk myself into a Tennessee win. Neither team has a good defense. Tennessee has a terrible defense. But, Baltimore has run for, I think, at least 200 yards or at least 150 yards their last 5 games, and at least 200 yards in 3 of those games and 404 yards in the last game, and Dobbins has come on. So the running offense is just clicking. Tennessee, they get zero pressure with their front four. And that's kind of the recipe for Lamar Jackson to cook, is that he can just kind of pick and choose and when he wants to run and run from that empty set if he wants. So this is kind of a weird upset pick because I think most people think Baltimore is a better team, and But, Tennessee just has such an insanely efficient offense across the board. That offense is loaded. They've got Corey Davis, who I think was just shy of 1,000-yard season. A.J. Brown tore it up. Jonnu Smith is a playmaker at tight end. And, of course, Derrick Henry. I wouldn't be surprised to see either team win. I think this is the biggest flip-flop game of the whole slate, the playoff slate.
It's the hardest game to predict by far, I think.
Yeah. I think in the end, Baltimore does win this. I think they're going to be playing with maybe a little bit more fire. I think their defense is better. And, like you said, this has just been a crazy COVID season for them. It's been hard to get momentum. And I think they're clicking a little bit right at the right time. So, I think I would edge Baltimore just slightly in this matchup.
Well, I just want them to win because I want to see Mahomes against Lamar in the second round, because I just think that'll be an incredible playoff game if those two face up against each other. But I completely agree with you. I think that these two teams, it literally can go any way. I mean, it is in Tennessee. Baltimore doesn't have a very good record on the road. So that should be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I think there's the head coach for Tennessee, Mike Vrabel, I think is kind of living rent-free inside of Baltimore's heads because of the last couple of games they played.
Yeah.
The game they played this season, Baltimore ran the ball over 60% in the first half and then passed the ball over 60% in the second half. And Lamar Jackson had that terrible game. He was like 4 for 11 in the first half with just some terrible numbers. And I think they're just kind of, they almost had that fight early in the season too at midfield. So this is going to be a fun game to watch. This is probably going to be the most exciting, drama-filled game to watch just because of some of the bad blood that's boiling, I think, and the matchups of the last couple of years. But, man, I think kind of on edge with Mike Vrabel and what he's been able to do against them. But, yeah, I go Baltimore here, just barely.
Yeah, no, it's definitely going to be the game of the weekend, in my opinion. Moving on to the final NFC game of Super Wildcard Weekend, and that is the 8-8 Bears playing the New Orleans Saints. A bit of a dud, in my opinion, this game. Obviously, the Saints do not have a very good record in the playoffs over the last couple of years. Home playoff games in that regard, in the fact that they've lost the last two of those. But I think this is the last chance they have with Drew Brees, in my opinion, and could be an interesting shout if the Bears are able to get firing and maybe cause an upset here.
I don't think the Bears have got a snowball's chance in hell of winning this game. I don't want to hear this nonsense about Kamara's out, so they've got a chance. They're playing Mitch Trubisky at quarterback, okay? He is crap. And look, I agree with you that this is the last chance at Breeze. I mean, I think the Saints are $75 million over the salary cap for next season. So they're going to have to make some big changes and cut payroll. So, this is pretty much the last shot with Breeze. And he's been on a bit of a decline this season, to be honest. He got injured again. Hasn't been as effective as in previous seasons. But look, they've suffered a lot of heartbreak in the playoffs the last 3 years. Obviously, the Stephon Diggs walk-off, the Minnesota Miracle, and then the non-call against the Rams, and then, was it the pass interference against the Vikings?
That was just atrocious,
So, they've had a lot of heartbreak. Maybe fourth time is lucky. Breeze's last chance, will Sean Payton still be there next season, or is he still eyeing up that Cowboys job, which will probably be vacant because Mike McCarthy is useless.
Yeah.
It's a very big game, but I reckon, the Bears, Trubisky's going to have to play like a god for them to have a chance. And, I just don't see that happening. They don't deserve to be in the playoffs either, the Bears. They only got in because the playoffs expanded this season. And, they've been, they're an average team. They're an 8-8 team. They're average, And, I reckon they'll get a bit of a pasting in this game.
Well, I just think the Dolphins are looking at the Bears just being like, how the fuck did you get into the playoffs and we didn't? Considering they went 10-6, the Bears went 8-8, and the Washington no-names went 7-9.
Would any of us really be that surprised if the Saints pull a absolute New Orleans Saints and lose this game.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't at all. That's why I mentioned it at the start, because I think it's
I could
definitely a
definitely see.
possibility.
Yeah, I could definitely see some serious ref ball sort of taking place here. But look, I just don't think the Bears are good enough to even put the Saints in a position where they could risk it. Obviously, playing with no Kamara is a bit of an issue. But, it's not like the Browns where they're missing their coach and 3 players, So I reckon that they'll just have too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think, of all this is by far the least interesting game of the matchups this weekend. A lot of the other games you can kind of talk yourself into a script for either team winning. This is one where I just don't see any path to victory for Chicago. They made it in by winning a ton of their last few games, but they had the easiest schedule in the NFL from weeks 11 to 16. So they you can say, hey, Trubisky played incredible down the home stretch, but he did it against really bad teams. They have been playing. They were playing better. They handed the play calling off to the Laser. I forget his first name, and they kind of had a little revival there in Chicago. But they just their defense, I think, might be better than New Orleans. New Orleans has a good defense. It's not a great defense, and missing Kamara, I think it's going to be big. I don't think it can be overstated how big that is. Michael Thomas is eligible to play again. Who knows how effective he's going to be? Who knows how Drew Brees is going to be against some pressure that that front four can possibly bring from Chicago. But yeah, I just don't see. I think this is like you got to take the over if you're betting here. I think this is like a 10, 14 point game probably.
It's definitely going to be a high scoring game. Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Yeah. I think the Kamara factor. I think it doesn't hinder their offensive ability in this game, but I think it will definitely hinder their ability in being able to make a deep run into the playoffs. I think he's a very vital part of that team, but I agree with you. I don't think it will make much of a difference in this game. Moving on to the final game of the weekend, and that is a rematch of Week 17 in Cleveland Browns versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, the first time for the Cleveland Browns in the playoffs in nearly 2 decades, which is a huge achievement for them to even be here. The Browns obviously have some COVID concerns with a lot of their staff members testing positive for COVID. But given the fact that this game is in Pittsburgh, do you guys really see this as an upset at all?
No, I think the Steelers kind of, they rested a lot of their players last week. Ben didn't play, or a few starters on defense. And, the Browns barely beat them. But, they barely beat them. If Rudolph converts that 2-point conversion, it's tied up with a minute left. So, Cleveland, I think they've had a successful enough season anyway. They've achieved something that they haven't since 2002, the second longest playoff drought in North American sports. So they've finally broken through that. But, I thought they might have a chance, but, Stefanski and the coaches, and then they're missing a few players on defense now because they've all contracted COVID. So, look, I think the Steelers, well rested, should win this game. But if there's one thing the Steelers are really good at, it's playing down to competition. Yeah. And not closing out games that they should, losing to the name redacted down there in Washington, for example. Playing it really close with a lot of really crap teams, which has sort of been the sort of hallmark of the Mike Tomlin era. So, I could definitely see them losing. When Jacksonville rocked up there after barely beating the Bills in the most boring playoff game ever and put 45 on them, they played down to their competitions, So, I could, the Browns have a chance, and this game definitely suits them as big underdogs, even more so now with the COVID stuff. So, I'll be in with it. But, I think this is more Pittsburgh have to play poorly more than the Browns have to play well, I think, for them to win.
Man, I could talk myself into either team here. Stefanski deserves to win Coach of the Year here. Making the playoffs, like you said, crazy long drought. It's been 18 years, I want to say, in Cleveland. That team, first year in a COVID season, it's just crazy. They, that running game can get going. Pittsburgh. I think the thing that Pittsburgh needs to do is they got to get away. When they were kind of on fire, they had a weak schedule, yes, but they were letting Big Ben kind of let loose and throw it downfield, which is what he does so well. And they kind of tightened things up a bit in that stretch where they lost some games. That game against Indianapolis only a couple of weeks ago, they were trailing, and then there's the stories that came out with Big Ben basically drawing up backyard plays in the dirt and calling the plays in the huddle. That's what brought him back. And I think that the thing to watch is whether or not they incorporate that. If Pittsburgh's going to make a run, they need to incorporate some of what they were doing there and letting him throw the ball. I mean, I really could see either team winning here. I don't think Pittsburgh is as good as their initial, I think, 10-0 record indicated. They played a bunch of weak teams. I think they're still good. They're not great. Cleveland's kind of in the same boat. Baker Mayfield really does not play well under pressure. So if Pittsburgh can bring any kind of pressure, that's their key to success, along with incorporating a little bit more downfield, unpredictable plays. They got to run away from Myles Garrett, that's for sure. But I think Pittsburgh comes out in another close game.
I think I agree with you there. Let's move on to the divisional round. Obviously, with the changes to the playoff seedings this year, the top teams in each conference receive the first round bye compared to previous years where the top two teams would receive a bye. And those teams are obviously the Kansas City Chiefs and the Green Bay Packers. How important do you think a first round bye is in playoff competition, fellas? Obviously, the last 7 Super Bowls have all featured at least a number 1 or number 2 seed. So do you see one of these two teams going all the way and potentially winning the whole thing?
Easily, yeah. I think especially in this season, some teams didn't even get their bye because they had, the COVID issues and they just had to play, on a different day. And that bye is everything, especially in the NFL, where you get an extra week to rest up and prep for an opponent. I mean, as a high school coach, I can tell you the more time to prep your players, the chances for your success increase exponentially. So
yeah, having
an extra week to rest, it's huge. Yeah, I mean, those are the odds-on favorites right now for everything. I am incredibly excited at the very likely possibility of a Tampa Bay versus Green Bay second-round game. The Battle of the Bays, Brady against Rodgers in an NFC playoff matchup.
Yeah, first matchup for them. Yeah.
In the snow. I mean, that's going to be crazy.
That'd be incredible, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's like it makes me think about the Buffalo game this weekend. It's going to be temperatures in like the high 20s, and a team like Indy that's used to playing in a dome. Oh, man, like Philip Rivers coming from San Diego. Philip Rivers has never played anything less than like 50, 60 degrees, and he's going to go play in like 29-degree weather. Like, yeah, that's a huge change. So, man, that second-round game could be just crazy, but, we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves, I know, but the prospect of that happening is super exciting.
Well, no, you're right. Let's speak about that for a second, because obviously there is some very intriguing matchups that could take place in the divisional round. We've obviously spoken about the Mahomes versus Lamar Jackson one. And I think the potential first matchup between Rodgers and Brady in the postseason, I think, will be incredible. Obviously, you both have different picks for the Rams versus Seahawks game. But I think the Seahawks versus Saints matchup as well could be a very interesting game to watch.
Yeah, the divisional games are really suiting up to be all pretty excellent, to be honest. I would love to see Brady versus Rodgers, mainly because I would love to see Skip Bayless's head explode.
Did you see what the Giants cornerback tweeted at Skip Bayless?
No, I didn't see.
I forget his name, but he was a guy that Skip Bayless tweeted about and named him thank you Dallas for skipping on this guy, and then he had the game-sealing interception, and he basically clapped back at Skip Bayless on Twitter, which is golden because Skip Bayless just drives me up a wall.
He's such a hypocrite.
He's
he completely contradicts himself every year.
No, he's just, it's all narrative-based rubbish with him. But anyway, I just would love to see Rodgers versus Brady because, look, Tampa Bay is good, but they're not beating Green Bay. Rodgers is on a mission to prove the Packers were stupid for drafting his replacement in Jordan Love. And, playing down there in Lambeau, look, I know Brady's played in New England for all those years, but, Lambeau Field, it's a different beast. It doesn't, its stadium has its own name. It's not sold off like Gillette Stadium or whatever the hell the one down is called. Yeah. And then obviously seeing Russell versus Drew Brees would be awesome. And then you've got versus Lamar. Two excellent young QBs who have both, who've won the last 2 MVPs. It's all shaping up to be really excellent games, which means one of them will probably be good and the other 3 will be blowouts,
Well, I think the Breeze versus Rodgers NFC Championship game as well could be a very intriguing matchup.
Yeah, last thing about Lambeau, but that is one of the few stadiums in the NFL that brings with it some serious home field advantage, even without fans.
Yeah. It's one of the few real home field advantage stadiums.
Bit of trivia for you guys. Who is the only quarterback to win 2 playoff games at Lambeau Field?
I know the answer to this question all too well. The old Eli Manning, baby.
Eli Manning is the only quarterback to ever do that. Let's get it all on the table now because we're about to start the playoffs. So let's go ahead and lock in our AFC champion for the 2020 season. Who is representing the AFC at the Super Bowl this year, Dylan?
I'm going to go Buffalo.
Okay.
It's a big that's a tall task. They have maybe the toughest first-round matchup of any of the teams, and they have to finish it off with beating Kansas City. So it's a tall order, but they're playing so well right now.
And for you, Charles?
Look, I'm going for the boring answer. I'm going for the Chiefs. I just think, Mahomes, he's just too good, and I know that they didn't have the strongest schedule this season and they didn't blow teams away like they did earlier on, in the last couple of years. But, he's the best player in the NFL and, he won't win MVP, but, 15-1, home field advantage to the playoffs, a week off. I just don't trust Buffalo enough yet. I haven't seen them until they win a playoff game in this Josh Allen, Sean McDermott era. I just can't trust him. Sort of like with Lamar, I can't really trust him yet either. So, and I don't think Tennessee is going to beat. I don't think the Tennessee will beat the Chiefs. So yeah, I'm going Kansas City to repeat as AFC champs.
And who meets the Bills in the Super Bowl from the NFC, Dylan?
I'm going to let Charles take this one first.
All right.
Well, give me one more second to think about it.
Okay. Go for it.
All right. Yeah, look, my Super Bowl pick is the Chiefs against the New Orleans Saints. Drew Brees' send-off, he'll get to the Super Bowl. It'll be great to see the Saints after 3 years of heartbreak get there. I think they'll be able to do it. Obviously, this is a bit of a heart pick because I want to see Brees get out a winner.
Yeah.
And the Packers will probably end up winning, but, I would love to see the Saints versus the Chiefs because you get to see Patrick Mahomes against Patrick Mahomes, but about 15 years older, because Drew Brees really was Mahomes before that, throwing, he's got, I think there's been 10 5,000-yard seasons and Brees has got 5 of them. He's just been an absolute machine throughout his career. And, I that's the matchup I would most like to see. So that's the one I'm picking.
All right, I'm going to go with Green Bay. I think they're just too loaded on offense, and Rodgers is playing out of his mind right now. He's the clear MVP favorite for the season. Their defense isn't the strongest, but I think their defense is good enough to get things done. And yeah, I just think on offense, I don't think there's many teams that are going to be able to stop them. Tampa Bay, destroyed them in their earlier matchup. But if there's one player I want who is out for revenge, it's Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. So that's who I'm going with.
Well, I think it's impossible to not pick the Green Bay Packers here. They're obviously having an incredible season. The fact that Aaron Rodgers has thrown more TDs than they've punted this season, I think is just a ridiculous statistic and just proves how incredible that offense has been. I actually think, yeah, they're going to win it all. I think that's pretty obvious. I'm with you here, Dylan. I think it's going to be a Bills versus Packers Super Bowl, which would be an incredible game to watch. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a very exciting postseason. Tune in next week for another exciting episode of The View from Down Under.